Howdy, folks. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn. And today, for you, I have a bit of a Dungeons and Dragons video. And this is going to be more of a reaction video. And I'm just sharing my thoughts about the subject, but it is related to Dungeons and Dragons. So recently, I had a video recommended to me on YouTube and from Dungeons and Discourse. And I will put a link in the video down below so people can go watch it and they can formulate their own opinions and etc. About said YouTuber's content. But the primary focus of her video was discussing the Hasbro layoffs and that Dungeons and Dragons is dead. Now, I've personally done a video talking about the Hasbro layoffs, and I didn't defend the layoffs, but I didn't go full rage monkey either about it. I just decided to sit there and discuss it in a calm manner and share my thoughts about it and share information that has been posted about it and try to give a thoughts about what it was going to mean for Dungeons and Dragons. And honestly, at the time, I didn't know what it was going to mean for Dungeons and Dragons. And as I sit down and did some deep thinking, realistically, the Hasbro layoffs isn't going to mean anything for Dungeons and Dragons. Now, yes, there is employees that works at Wizards of the Coast that got laid off, and quite a few of them were heads. But realistically, it's not going to mean anything at the end of the day. And realistically, as I'm sitting there watching Dungeons and Discourse video, I'm pretty much just realizing that it's nothing but shit stirring. And basically, as I go through said YouTuber's channel, most of their content is nothing but shit stirring, which kind of got me thinking, why do you want to sit there and talk about Dungeons and Dragons when all you're doing is going full rage monkey every time you do a video? Now, with that being said, there is no point in going rage monkey over this whole situation. And I guess me sitting here as a Gen X, I'm going whatever. Because honestly, it is a whatever thing. There is no point of going into a meltdown. Life will go on. Life will continue. And with all this being said, she's kind of going crazy about Hasbro laying off all these people and how it's unfair and the whole 9 yards. And let's be honest, okay, while we can sit there and be sour about Hasbro laying off, it's 1,100 people. So it's 1,100 people is what the official number seems to be at this time, which is a follow-up to, I believe it was 800 people earlier in the year. It might have been 9. I'm pretty sure it was 8, though. But here, the truth is 2023 actually has seen increased layoffs across the board. This is not just Hasbro. This is everywhere. And, you know, we got one person to think about this, and or at least in my opinion, that the Build Back Better has been a dumpster fire, and I will leave it at that. That's just my opinion, and everyone can have their own opinion. Everyone is affected by things differently, which is going to formulate their own opinions based on their experiences and etc., as life should. And it's interesting that Dungeons and Discourse brings up Larian Studios, which did Baldur's Gate 3, and an article that was related to Larian Studios. It was actually I believe it was the head of Larian Studios, was discussing the situation of Baldur's Gate 3 and pretty much said about the people he had worked with and discussed the whole situation with about getting the ball rolling for Baldur's Gate 3 was it 4 or 5 years ago now at this point is when they started development on Baldur's Gate 3 and pretty much said that no one is left that he had worked with when the project started at Wizards of the Coast. Those people, most of those people are gone if they're not all gone. Okay. And there's something to catch here about this, okay? Because, you know, pretty much Dungeons Discourse goes on more on Full Rage Monkey on the whole thing about, you know, Wizards of the Coast laying off all these people. A lot of these people are gone. And of course, the article doesn't indicate if said people that was on the committee, board, whatever you want to call it, that was working with Larian Studios to get Baldur's Gate 3 done. It doesn't indicate if they were laid off, if they were fired, if they left. I I would honestly expect that it's a mix of all three of those. But I kind of chuckled about the attitude towards this as the video game industry itself has actually seen record layoffs in 2023. So kind of goes rage monkey about this whole thing, but then ignores the video game industry while talking about a video game. So, yeah, kind of missing a point here. And with all that being said, kind of goes off that Dungeons and Dragons is dead and Wizards of the Coast is screwing things up and there's no way they have everything ready. Meanwhile, they're already setting up, Wizards of the Coast is already setting up the pipe work for new product coming out, pre-orders for new product, as well as laying the pipe work for the next edition of Dungeons and Dragons that's going to be coming. Now, mentioned about a lot of artists getting laid off, and there's kind of a problem here, which I'm actually on Dungeons and Discourse side on this one, and mostly it has to do with AI art, and this is realistically going to become a problem in the future for artists, game developers, and it's just going to become an increasing problem, especially when it comes to the entertainment industry. We're actually already kind of starting to see it in the gaming industry as well, as AI are essentially starting to take over for script writing, storytelling, art, and it's just going to continue getting worse and worse and worse on this end. And hopefully, someone will kind of, get a chokehold on this before it gets too far out of control. So that's definitely something I'm on the side of Dungeons and Discourse with is AI is going to become an increasing problem, and honestly, AI is going to become an increasing problem even in the tabletop gaming industry, because essentially now you can use AI to even create, if you will, a whole tabletop role playing game and campaign setting, etc. So it's just going to continue to getting worse. Now, with all this being said, I do sympathize with the people that were laid off before the holidays. I really do. I know what it feels like. I've experienced it. I'm experiencing it right now, and I'm not even in the gaming industry. And I know a lot of people over the years who has experienced being laid off before the holiday season. Maybe before Thanksgiving, maybe after Thanksgiving, maybe right before Christmas. I literally know people who have been laid off from their jobs on Christmas Eve. And you're seeing that in an increasing number this year of people being laid off during the holiday season. It sucks. I know. And I have sympathy for the people that have essentially lost their jobs. But the truth is many people will get new jobs or may even get called back to their old jobs. I have actually already been informed I will be getting called back to work here very soon. So, while essentially I suffered like a 2 month layoff here, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to be going back to work and unemployment essentially covered my time off. So I got essentially an extended vacation. Okay, cool. And I imagine a lot of these people that Dungeons Discourse was talking about that, worked at Wizards of the Coast, especially that were heads of their department, they're going to end up getting new jobs somewhere else, or they're going to end up starting their own businesses or developing their own games or whatever. So these people that have lost their jobs, first off, probably makes more money, way more money than the average person does. Second off, they're going to get new jobs probably with no problem, especially right now because there is a boom in the tabletop gaming industry. Now, with all that being said, the primary focus or the primary thought of Dungeons and Discourse's video was this is the death of Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm going to be honest here. Dungeons and Dragons is going nowhere. Let me rewind the clock about 20 years for you folks. Actually, a little bit longer than 20 years at this point, I believe. And I will discuss about when TSR owned Dungeons and Dragons. And yes, this kind of dates me back quite a bit now at this point. when I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, it was Advanced Second Edition Dungeons and Dragons. TSR was the owning company, and TSR would end up buying out, Wizards of the Coast would end up buying out TSR and Dungeons and Dragons. And a lot of us at the time, especially when the third edition rules came out and we started looking at the third edition rules and what was there, a lot of us kind of looked at it and went, oh my God, this is the death of Dungeons and Dragons. Well, hmm. Well, I would know. I was there 3,000 years ago. No, it was not the death of Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, people essentially at that time frame, people just continued to play older editions. And honestly, at the time, the game continued on because of people like you. So, essentially, the people that didn't like what they saw with the new 3.0 editions of Dungeons and Dragons stuck with their old editions of Dungeons and Dragons, as well as a bunch of new people flocked to Dungeons and Dragons that really had no relation, thoughts, or anything about TSR. So essentially, the moral of the story is Dungeons and Dragons at that time frame would actually continue on, while many of us that was already part of the Dungeons and Dragons community thought that Wizards of the Coast was going to kill Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I will fast forward a few more years to when Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 edition was released, and it would become actually the biggest, most popular edition up until the modern 5th edition. And it's still actually a fairly sought after edition within the Dungeons and Dragons community, or at least that's what I perceivably see looking at online forums and so on and so forth, as well as OSR. OSR is still actually really popular. There's still groups still playing the old advanced Dungeons and Dragons that was created. Well, it's actually being recreated now, but that was created back in the 70s, folks. So, Dungeons and Dragons, as long as people are walking up to the table and playing Dungeons and Dragons, no matter what edition it is, Dungeons and Dragons isn't going to die. It's not going to die anytime soon. Sure, there may be impact that's going to happen because of the things that's going on at Wizards of the Coast with Wizards of the Coast running the show, but realistically, at the end of the day, it means absolutely nothing because Dungeons and Dragons will live on. And I'm fully convinced of that because it's going to live on through the players that enjoy the game, that still want to play the game, that are playing the old editions, and that just enjoys to sit down at a table with other people and role play their fantasy, whatever it is. May it be Cyberpunk, may it be Dungeons and Dragons, may it be Star Wars, doesn't matter the setting, because realistically, at the end of the day, it's all under kind of the same net extended family that started as Dungeons and Dragons. So it will continue to live on, folks. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this video up at that because there's really no point to continue. And my main focus was really just to say, hey, life's going to go on, and so is Dungeons and Dragons. As long as people are playing Dungeons and Dragons or even something from its essentially extended family. Anyway, folks, thanks again for tuning in and have yourself a wonderful day.